Many supporters of Governor Patrick were disappointed when he recently signed the sentencing reform legislation known as the Three Strikes Bill. The bill denies parole to certain violent repeat offenders. It also places new limits on mandatory sentencing for nonviolent drug offenses. But the most controversial feature is the lack of discretion by judges in denying parole. Governor Patrick wanted that part of the legislation to be changed, but the legislature held firm, despite disagreement from most of its Black and Latino members. Our guest is from one of the groups that made a last-minute call opposing signature by the governor. We'd like to welcome from the Black Community Information Center, Sadiki Kambon. Thank you very much for being with us.
My pleasure, Chris.
I know that there were plenty of people warning the governor about the downside of this legislation before it was even approved by the House and the Senate, but you spoke about this after he signed it. What was the point of keeping the argument going at that?
Well, essentially, we hope that there'll be some reconsideration down the line, but the most painful aspect is that, the governor is very aware of the negative impact that this bill can have on the Black and Latino community. Like it was stated before, there was no real research done, and I know he advocated for the whole judicial discretionary piece, but when it came down to the bottom line for him to make the decision, we were really disappointed that he in fact actually signed the bill, because he had three options. He could have, the number one option he took was to sign the bill, but he could have vetoed the bill. Of course, they would have overruled him and probably voted into law, but at least it would have given the appearance that he was making a stand. Or he could have gone like 2 minutes before the legislative period was to end for the year and brought the veto, and they wouldn't have had time to reconvene and to veto it. So what's going on is that, like I said before, that there's been no research done in this state, but we do have a track record for other states. 25 other states have actually had the Three Strikes crime bill, and what has happened is that 16 of them have actually pulled back because of the negative implications of the actions that were taken vis-a-vis through that bill, particularly in light of the effects on the Black and Latino community. So that what they found was that there was overcrowding, the costs were prohibitive, and that the highest percentage of individuals who in fact were being imprisoned were Black and Latino men and women. And so they they give the appearance that the bill itself only deals with folks who are really serious felons, murder and what have you. And let me just make it very clear that we in the Black community are very anti-crime. But this bill that's been passed, we know it's going to have a very negative impact on our community, because of the fact that as it stands right now in the state of Massachusetts, Black and Latino men only make up 14% of the population, but like 55% of the prison population. So this is only going to exacerbate the situation. And we have done some research, like for instance, what we found is why there's such a huge discrepancy is that there was a young lady who, for her doctoral dissertation, she did some research in Western Mass. And with the vis-a-vis so-called war on drugs, which had a very negative impact on our community, what she found was, like in Western Mass, is that what happens is that if a Black man was caught with a small amount of cocaine, he would be sent to the federal court and get the federal time. If it was a white male, they would be sent to the local court and probably get community service. So what's going to happen is that what's going to filter down is that you're going to have individuals say they might get caught with a joint. And without the judicial discretion and the judge not being able to have input, if the prosecutor says, well, okay, you had a joint, you get 50 years, the judge can't intercede and say, well, look, he got caught with a joint, so maybe we should give him community service. He has to serve the 50 years.
Let's make sure we're clear about this, because is this that if there is a third strike of any kind, there's an automatic loss of parole, or does that third strike have to be another really serious violent crime?
Well, what we found is that the way that you've laid it out there, that's the way the bill is supposed to work. But when you have the issue of quote-unquote racism involved, then it becomes a whole nother animal.
But what about the language of the bill itself?
Well, the language of the bill, it defines it very much in the way, it gives the appearance that, well, if somebody is, committed 2 murders, then you would assume they just need to be in jail for the rest of their life. But what we found is, like, some of the research that I've done, and the reason why the other states have pulled back is that the bill is applicable to even some of the most minor offenses out here that puts people, so you've got a lot of people who are in prison right now for minor drug offenses that shouldn't even be in prison. And so what we're saying is that rather than this bill, which is going to cost so much money, rather than put it for folks with minor offenses in prison, then they should be in a program or in school. But then also you have the prison industrial complex, who was very supportive of this bill, not only here but across the country, because of the fact that they're in the business of Wall Street prisons. And without prisoners, they are in business and they can't make money. So you're talking about another form of slavery, if you will, which has been written upon by a young lady now who has a book out there about it. This is called The New Jim Crow, with the prisoner population, and it's talking about primarily us.
Looking at the votes in the legislature from Boston, at least in the Black and Latino task force, they were all against this bill except for Representative Jeff Sanchez from Jamaica Plain and Mission Hill. And in the JP Gazette, he says that he went along with this. He says there's just so much violence that he was concerned about around Hyde Square, Jackson Square, that he just really felt that there were at least some people out there who just have no respect for human life.
Well, yeah, and we understand that, but also there's a lot of generalization out here because of the fact that 2% of the population is a problem out here. You know, like I live in the community and, you know, walk the streets every day, and I don't walk around, you know, I'm aware, but I don't walk around in fear of my life. I go shopping just like everyone else. And, you know, what I say to Representative Sanchez, he should be ashamed of himself, and Governor Deval Patrick, he sold us out. The bottom line is that he sold us out because of the fact that he did not have to sign this bill. And I heard another theory that was very interesting for someone, that not only was Governor Deval Patrick thinking about his political future, above and beyond, even though he's not running for governor again, is that he's going across the country speaking out in behalf of President Obama and his campaign. And so that there was concerns in the Obama campaign that if Governor Patrick was out there, that he would be confronted by the Republicans and saying, well, aren't you weak on crime? Didn't you just veto a crime bill? And so that they're saying that for political reasons, he also signed that bill.
It'd be like Willie Horton all over again.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what do you think about the governor? If that theory was true, what would that make you think of the governor?
Well, it wouldn't change what I think right now. The governor sold us out. He did not have to sign this bill, and he knows it. And like I said before, it'd be one thing if you know, if this is new terrain, but I know his people have said, well, look, Governor, 25 states have tried this, and 16 have given it up. And these are the figures right here to say that this is not a good idea. But evidently he went with the political flow in terms of what was in the best interest of him and possibly President Obama, and signed it into.
One other take on this is that this is a very political election year, very big year with the presidential race and some local races, and that next year when things cool down, it will be maybe easier for the governor to moderate this bill. What do you think?
You know, I just don't buy into that theory because we're always sold that bill of goods that, you know, we're going to revisit this. I mean, it is what it is right now. And I know there were those in my community who were upset when I said that he sold out because of the fact I said, well, look, if Mitt Romney did that, we would be calling him a racist, right-wing Republican. And so for me, wrong is wrong. And the governor is wrong to sign this bill. It's going to have a very negative impact on our community, particularly for our young folks who are looking for options out here to do the right thing. But we're the ones that are going to bear the brunt of this bill, and the governor knows that, and he ought to be ashamed of himself.
Thank you very much for being with us.
I appreciate it being here.
Sadiki Kambon from the Black Community Information Center. Still to come, a call from mentors to help students in the Boston Debate League.